This session will be moderated by Brandy Scott. Let's welcome her again to the stage. And please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists, His Excellency Dr. Nasser Ahmed al-Naimi, Secretary General, Tawazun Council for Defense Enablement. Also, His Excellency Abdullah Al-Hamli, Chief Executive Officer, Economic Cities and Free Zones Cluster, Abu Dhabi Ports Group. And Dr. Sven Beaker, Managing Director, Silicon Valley Mobility and Lecturer, Stanford Business School. Brandy, the floor is yours.
Here we are again. Marhaba everyone, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. I know it's been a very full day. This is going to be a very fast but also very informative expert exchange. Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to investigate how autonomy, robotics, and digital intelligence are changing the way we plan, build, and operate our industrial and urban environments. Our three experts today, I'm just going to introduce in a little bit more detail for anyone who might not be as familiar with what they look after here in Abu Dhabi. His Excellency Dr. Nasser Ahmed al-Naimi is Secretary General for the Tawazun Council for Defence Establishment. So, that is an independent government entity that is working very closely with the Ministry of Defence, different security agencies here in the UAE, making sure that they can put together solutions that enhance everyone's work. Meanwhile, His Excellency Abdullah Al-Hamali is the Chief Executive Officer of the Economic Cities and Free Zones Cluster at AD Ports Group. They oversee KEZAD Group, so that is the UAE's largest operator of fully integrated economic zones, and we've got the massive deepwater Khalifa port as sort of the jewel, the gateway there, haven't we? And Sven Beaker is a lecturer at Stanford Business School, which needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever, and Managing Director of Silicon Valley Mobility. And that is a Palo Alto-based entity that looks after everyone from corporates to startups to investors to industry associations, bringing all of the mobility transformation space together. So that's what we do. I want to actually start, though, almost with a definition. What does it really mean to make a city or a port or an industrial zone or a sector autonomous ready? What is autonomous ready? Dr. Nasser.
Well, Brandy, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be among those esteemed guest speakers. Allow me first to commend you for the selection. To the audience, ladies and gentlemen, we have an academic who is very renowned. We have a successful business developer. And then you have me here who might fit into a regulator. So I think that would open up the questions to you. You could ask any question related to autonomy, and we will be more than happy to answer. As Brandy said, we will try to make this fun, and we will do our best to meet your expectations. To everybody, I would like to set the floor. Technology today is not a specific sector. It's actually across every sector. Defense, though people are concerned when we say defense and technology, defense is not an exception. We have used and we are using technology a lot to enable our defense system. So I'll give you an example. A tank today is not a tank 20 or 30 years ago. An airplane today is not an airplane 20 or 30 years ago. It's AI enabled, it's full of sensors, it's a moving data center. So with that in mind, that actually urges the need for us to develop an infrastructure that meets that expectation. Back to Brandy's question when it comes to what does it mean to be an autonomy ready? I would say, ma'am, to your question, 3 pillars: the infrastructure, the policies and standards and regulations, and 3 is the vision and the commitments to be so. I heard it this morning, and I'm so happy to repeat it. In Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, those requirements are actually flipped. we have our leaderships who are driving the technology and the autonomy enablement. So the vision is actually starting with that. And then we have the entities that align that vision with policies and procedures. And as everybody today, this morning, said it's an ecosystem where partnership is very clear in Abu Dhabi and holistically in the whole of the UAE. So we, as an enabler, we make that happen through policies, procedures, and regulations. And the last portion is the infrastructure. So what makes a port or a defense industrial zone autonomy ready is the infrastructure, from both hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure. And I'm sure my colleagues will add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdullah, please add to that. Tell us what you have put in place at KZ, at the port, to become autonomy ready, and where you are in that journey.
We are pretty advanced. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, and thanks His Excellency for the humble introduction. And to be honest, it's, I think it's up to us how hard can we follow our leaders' footsteps. We know, mashallah, our leadership is today, their agenda is autonomous and investing in AI and you name it. Mm-hmm. So I think I'll take you back to 13 years ago when we first started Khalifa Port. Back then it was brought to the board members and the chairman at Khalifa Port to decide whether they want to go fully automated Khalifa Port or let's say partially. I think back then going for full automation was risky. There was only one port in China, and they weren't fully optimized. So the decision was to go for half automated container terminal 13 years ago. During that period, I became in charge of the terminal operation, and I saw how the autonomous system and its operation, how it's very convenient, very safe, and it meets customers' expectation. We worked on the algorithm where we had to prioritize container movement, where it became the first in the region to follow this. So, having the AI, the autonomous, and the latest technologies in our DNA 13 years ago, I think this became something that goes by default, especially when, as mentioned by His Excellency, the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure. Today, we are cooperating with Etisalat, with DO on the 5.0 or the 5G technology to enable our investors. We have many investors who are now adopting AI and the smart manufacturing, which they are enjoying, and they can see the benefit of it. So as Abu Dhabi Ports Group, as industrial, as the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and UAE, this is top priority agenda that everyone is seriously following.
Sven, tell me what ingredients are needed for and I'm thinking city and industrial zone purely because of the kind of discussions we're having today, but you're studying this around the world. I know you've just done that big study on robo-taxis in China. What needs to be in place for this to work? And when it's not, what's missing?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, let me also thank Your Excellencies for inviting me here to this esteemed panel and be part of the discussion, bringing in some perspective from Silicon Valley. And before I answer your question about the ingredients, I'd also like to offer maybe a little bit of a framework, if you will, autonomy and automation. And that is something that we discussed early on around 2010 at Stanford University when this initiative, if you will, came about. And automation would be if a system basically follows exactly the instruction from a human. This is like if, then, else, if this happens, this should be done. But autonomy goes beyond this. And I'm explaining this way because I think there are massive benefits that we are just beginning to understand. Autonomy is when the system makes decisions by itself. The vehicles now might be autonomous, that they basically decide without human oversight, but they are still following the instructions that we give them. Bring this container from this dock to that freight yard. Get me from here to the airport. But once this becomes autonomous, if really the whole logistics system gets integrated and the vehicle decides by itself from which dock to which freight yard it's going to bring the container, this is, I think, when we are beginning to see what the full potential of this technology is. Now, Brandy, if you ask what are the ingredients, much was already mentioned by my esteemed panelists here. Like infrastructure needs to be in place, that you can control those vehicles, that the vehicles know where they are. A lot of data needs to be available, like high definition maps. A lot of training needs to go into the development of those vehicles. Also throughout the day, we discussed a lot like the regulatory framework. We need to actually explain this technology to those who are supposed to use it as operators, but also those who will be affected as bystanders, as people who work in the port or who maybe walk the city and all of a sudden cannot make eye contact with the driver anymore. So all this was already discussed. So therefore, let me add a few other things here. One that I always say is the road needs to be machine readable. And that sounds easier said than done, I would say, because computer vision is already very far advanced, but it's basically that human-readable roads are now being read by computers. So we need to ask the question, what in addition do we need to install that not just humans, but increasingly machines can navigate itself? That might not just be by vision, but also, let's say, transponders and beacons that send out a signal and say, well, when you get into this sector, then do this and that. And then even more, I would say, centralized traffic control. And that is, again, about infrastructure, but how we deploy and use this infrastructure, like communication infrastructure that might go beyond 5G.5 infrastructure, really a centralized traffic coordination system that really then allows for this autonomy that I mentioned in the beginning. So this is just where we are basically grasping the early potential of it, much more to come.
Okay, well, I've just hosted a panel on collaboration a few minutes before this one. A port or a city, a lot of moving parts, a lot of stakeholders. What makes the collaboration, particularly between governments, regulators? I mean, you've pointed out, Dr. Nasser, we've got half the people on this panel today, so we should be able to answer these questions. What makes it go well, and when it doesn't, what makes it difficult?
Interesting, thank you. Allow me first to use a minute to tell the audience about Tawazun Council for Defense Enablement. Why am I here into this autonomy? That we're doing defense enablement. One of our core mandates at Tawazun Council is to establish, operate, and regulate defense industry zones. We currently have multiple zones. Maybe some of you may be familiar with the TIP, Tawazun Industrial Park, that has been on and functional for the last 10 years or so, 15 years, I would say. And we also have smaller specialized industrial parks. We are planning a state-of-the-art, first of its region, first of its type in the region, that is a free zone defense industry. So with that in mind, ma'am, that brings in the question, what makes it safe? What makes it, operational? What makes it, secure? The answer to that, ma'am, and to the audience is regulation, regulation, regulation. But because technology evolved very quickly, we cannot afford to develop the technology and then look into regulation. As was said this morning, if some of you were here in the morning, by their excellencies, I remember His Excellency Faisal Bennai mentioned that very much more than once. Because technology evolves very quickly, we cannot afford to retain or go slower when it comes to regulation. So what we do in Abu Dhabi is the fact that we sit in around tables with technology developers, users, and regulator, and we draft regulations. In addition to the regulations, we do testing. And testing is not just testing in vitro, it's not testing in academia. We do testing, on the roads. So with testing and regulation and the right mix, I think we do our best to make the technology, sovereign, to make the technology secure within given entities. So that is actually more of a collaborative effort, as you said, with multiple stakeholders on stage. I leave the rest to the others. I'm sure they would add more to that. Thanks.
Yeah, well, you have many, many stakeholders, Abdullah. How are you balancing the needs and that timeline that Dr. Nasser mentioned of innovation, regulation, operations, that triangle?
As clearly mentioned by Dr. It's a little maybe harder at our side because we deal with investors. And these investors expect, whatever ideas they have, they'll see it, roaming around our industrial zone or crossing from a zone to another where it interacts with the standard and normal, traffic. Therefore, we are in very close relationship with Department of Municipalities and Transportation, with ITC, the Integrated Traffic Center. We are also working very closely with the police and other entities where we make sure, whatever implementation takes place, we make sure it is implemented safely and it has the right support when it comes to the soft and hard infrastructure. I'll use an example. We are co-investors with a private partner in a park. We called it Metal Park, a very unique setup, where this metal park serves metal industry with two zones. We have a free zone and a mainland. What he is now about to implement is AGVs, the autonomous guided vehicle, where today you have your metal at the free zone yard, and you want to move it to the mainland. You just send a request through the system, and these AGVs will pick up your commodities or metal from the free zone, move it to the mainland to be fabricated, and then sent off to your location. We have the street dedicated, we have the system ready. It's only a matter of once we get this cleared with the government entities, then we can place the order and get these AGVs. And hopefully, the next cycle, we'll be able to show it live, inshallah.
How do you do that amongst the different partners within KZAD, though, without, people can be quite proprietary about what they're doing for competitiveness reasons, apart from anything else. How do you get everyone on the same page?
See, for investors within their factories, there isn't any limitation, and we are seeing great advancement when it comes to the smart machineries, robotics in their factories. And the limitation there is almost nothing, because as long as it does not go outside their factory. We have some furniture factories that Shoba, I've seen it. Like you're walking into something that fully automated. I mean, the human interaction is very minimal. You can see robotics, painting, doing all the machinery, job. You don't see any manual workers working. We have other, factories that use smart systems into building robotics for international car builders. So within the zone, there isn't any limitation. We have seen amazing, adaptation to autonomy and smart technologies.
Sven, tell me, talk to me about moving those parts together, particularly that balancing act between regulation and speed and safety. Best practice around the world. Silicon Valley keeps capping up to what we're doing here?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, regulation is not really much liked in Silicon Valley. So, because Silicon Valley has this mantra, move fast and break things and learn from it, that doesn't really stick very well with a regulatory approach. But also, I do remember when really the self-driving vehicles were becoming of age. This is, well, now already more than 10 years ago, that the leading companies, tech firms, really went to the different states in the United States, let's say, to inform the legislator, to tell them, this is what we are planning to do. Let us explain this to you. Let us inform you that you as regulators can make the right decisions to put out the guardrails that are necessary. And why did that happen? It is something that even the most daring companies, Silicon Valley and elsewhere, in my observation, are in the end humbled by what can happen when things go wrong. And that they want a framework that they can say, we aligned with this framework. So even in the audacity of Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, in the end, they do want a framework that they can say, we complied, we checked all the boxes, if any, we deployed, and we moved forward in the interest of society, which is nicely said. There are certainly other interests as well. But this is, in my observation, where it really got interested, that even this sometimes loose cannon that Silicon Valley can be was asking for regulation. And therefore, in my observation, it was a quite successful approach in California, copied by other jurisdictions as well. Slightly different approaches that we saw in Arizona or Texas. But in the end, because it is not just an app on your smartphone, it is not just a computer game. There are lives at risk if things go wrong. This is why regulation in the end is appreciated as long as it's mutually informed.
Very quickly on the back of that, where do you think then that we stand in terms of AI regulation, what we have but what we need?
Yeah, well, this is, I guess, where my home continent, Europe, is probably leading with AI regulation. And some say, well, Europe regulates AI while others are developing AI. I don't think it's that black or white. But I will say where the European AI regulation might be slowing down some development, it is, in that sense, being looked at by other jurisdictions to see what can we take over from this. I think as we are not quite sure what are all the benefits and challenges that AI presents, it's a little bit like who goes first. But the AI regulation is also forming in the United States and other parts of the world as well.
We are nearly out of time, but I'm going to steal a few more minutes just to ask you to summarize where all of this is going. If we look ahead to 2030, what is it, the next decade? How do you see ports and logistic zones and cities actually operating? What's it going to look like? And what's both the biggest opportunity, but also the risk or the challenge in that? Where are we headed?
Well, I would say the roadmap to 2030 or beyond is not very clear. I don't think we have the capability or the knowledge today to imagine completely where we're going. But what we have today, and this is back to Dr. Baker's point of view, that what we have today is assuring enough for Abu Dhabi and for Abu Dhabi entity to move the next step. That is why we heard today, this morning, that the plans is not for 2030, 2050. There are expectations in 2026, which is just, around the corner. With that in mind, guys, we're moving from efficiency to more of a sustainability, sovereignty, which is really a different level of warehouses. So it's not just going to be driven by efficiency and economy. Abu Dhabi is not going to be the second Singapore or the second Hong Kong or San Francisco for that sake, but it's actually designing its own pathway. And you need to believe in that because we have what it takes to show a different image, I think, in Abu Dhabi. And you would see this in action. So the future is very bright. We can't fully imagine it or draw it on a full-scale book, but I think we can see it happening. And the beauty of what we're doing is that we're discovering as we are going, as we're moving.
Abdullah?
I agree with Doctor. It is very challenging. And I'll have two answers. Maybe the first part is concerning Abu Dhabi Ports Group and what is our aspiration and our commitment. It's limitless. Specifically or especially what falls within our responsibility. I did not mention Safina Green. يمكن سعادتك سمعت فيها. We've announced or in more than one occasion we mentioned Safina Green, or we launched Safina Green. It's a 200 nautical mile ship capable that can do a surveillance, can do a subsea survey. It is manless, so it operates with minimal fuel consumption because it has biofuel. This is something that if you get a chance to go fishing in Abu Dhabi, you will be seeing it. And it is, around the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. So these are the things we are doing, what falls within our responsibility. We are making sure that, every possible way that we can utilize, automated drones. I'm having a discussion with Etisalat is to launch a program where I will have auto-scheduled, drones that will fly over my zones to check, for misbehavior or, progress on constructions. These are the things that we can do within the zone. What concerns Abu Dhabi and the UAE, today we are attracting businesses that will be serving, AI, and I'm specifically about data centers. I will be launching, inshallah, soon with, the team, a park that only, will be attending to data centers that will be serving, autonomous, activities, AI, you name it. We currently house, few data centers who are currently serving, the same purpose. So for us, preparing the infrastructure, whether it's hard, soft, to make Abu Dhabi and the UAE able to serve that agenda anytime, whenever the policies, whenever the regulations ready, we are ready to proceed.
Sven, next steps?
Well, next steps, let's see where things might be going. And for this, I invite everybody to think a moment what we are about to do here with autonomous transportation. In my view, that is the physical manifestation of the internet. If you think about it, the internet moves around data and information. Transportation moves around people and boxes. So the internet cannot move around what transportation moves around. But now we are automating and then making transportation autonomous, and if it all connects digitally, then something amazing is going to happen. What that's going to be, I'm not able actually to explain to you because that goes beyond my imagination, and it's a pretty big word for a lecturer at Stanford University, but I leave it like this. But the integration of the internet with an autonomous transportation system has immense potential.
Well, you've been listening this afternoon to His Excellency Dr. Nasser Humaid Al Nuaimi, His Excellency Abdullah Al Hamili, and Sven Baker. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your views today.